Welcome back. The Biden administration is on a diplomacy spree in China in an effort to ease tensions between the rival superpowers. And President Joe Biden's climate envoy, John Kerry, is actually headed to Beijing today after the visits from Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. So joining us to talk about the state of U.S.-China relations today is Dave Stilwell. He's the former Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Good to have you back.
Good morning. Good to see you.
So what are we expecting this time around?
Just in one word, nothing. The optics are good that we're talking, but the optics also work against us in that we're sending people repeatedly to Beijing without any return visits. The message to the Chinese is that we need something, we're nervous, and we have to be patient and let them come to us.
And we did see Secretary Blinken just meet with a counterpart over in Jakarta for those meetings there. But at the same time, Yellen, did we have any actual outcomes from that visit?
Well, I think there were some hard words spoken, unnecessary words about how we need to have a balance in our economies that just doesn't exist and hasn't existed. But unless there are consequences, there's not going to be any action on the Chinese part. It's the same with Kerry's visit. Unless there's consequences to get the PRC to stop building 2 coal-fired power plants per week. I mean, how does that comport with reducing carbon output? Unless we can get them to do that through economic consequences, they're not going to change. There's no incentive for them to change.
Mm-hmm. So the hawks over in D.C. as well as the GOP have criticized all of this kind of dialogue as more like zombie engagement from the Chinese. Do you agree with that?
Well, there's quiet engagement in the background, but again, unless there's enough pressure on them to change or to live up to their agreements, I mean, if you look at what they signed up for in Paris, they're going to continue to increase carbon output, where the U.S. is spending what, $3 trillion to decrease carbon output. That gives them an advantage economically and elsewhere, and we have to hold them to those agreements.
And money for sure talks. We talk about economic, we talk about political, but military is really how this all started with all those confrontations in the oceans and in the skies. And PLA is celebrating its Army Day, the Chinese military, on August 1st. Any expectations there?
Well, you're not going to see any giant parades going through Tiananmen Square. That's every decade or so. But you may see more provocative activity. Remember, we're there legally in international waters. It's not like we flew a balloon over the top of China. We are operating international waters, and they are the ones who are flying dangerously close. You saw them cut off our ship just transiting peacefully through the Taiwan Strait. You may see more of that. And just remember, the fingers need to point at the perpetrator and not the people who are being annoyed or bothered. So.
And definitely, we talk about all of these actions, but NATO just completed as well the summit. Were there takeaways there in terms of what we're doing in the Pacific?
Well, I don't watch that closely, but a couple of good things. One, Europe, not NATO, but Europe is deciding to take economic steps to stop what PRC is doing economically. That's probably their best contribution. As far as military, I hope that NATO invests in its own defense to keep Russia at bay, which they should have done before the invasion in 2022. They had all that time from 2014, and they failed to do it. And so it's the U.S. who's riding to the rescue again, which I think hurts us in the Pacific. Right? We're now splitting our attention. We should be allowed to focus in the Pacific. NATO should focus on the Russia problem in Ukraine, and that's a good distribution of effort. Many hands make light work.
All right, well, we appreciate all this insight. We'll have this interview online as well as for those who've missed it, and we'll be watching what happens with John Kerry's visit. Thank you so much, Dave Stilwell, joining us this morning.